You ever just stop and wonder why our world is this crazy patchwork of unbelievable wealth living right alongside extreme poverty? It's honestly one of the biggest, most important questions there is. So today, let's put on our detective hats and really investigate what the engine of prosperity is.
And I want to be clear, we're not talking about a small gap here. It's massive. Why is it that the average person in one country can expect a life of comfort and opportunity, while someone somewhere else struggles for the absolute basics? We're going to treat this just like a detective story, and we are on the hunt for the real culprit behind it all.
And check this out. This slide really makes that abstract idea totally concrete. When you look at the average income per person, the US just towers over Mexico, which itself is way wealthier than Kenya. We're talking about a 20-fold difference from top to bottom. And that's not just a statistic, right? That number represents massive differences in healthcare, in education, in pretty much every aspect of life.
Okay, so where do we start our investigation? Well, you always start with the most obvious answer, right? Our prime suspect is just stuff. It seems like common sense, doesn't it? Rich countries have more things, more factories, fancier machines, better roads. Wealth must just come from piling up all this physical capital.
Now, to be a little more precise about what we mean by stuff, economists have a term for it: physical capital. You'll often see it as the letter K. It's basically the whole collection of man-made tools we use to produce things. Everything from a simple hammer all the way up to a giant, sophisticated microchip factory.
All right, every good detective needs the right tools for the job. And for this investigation, we're bringing out the big guns, the Nobel Prize-winning Solow growth model.
So what is this thing? Well, you can think of the Solow model as a powerful thought experiment. It's like a simulator for an economy. It lets us test out different ideas to see what really drives growth. And its main job for us today is to see just how far our prime suspect, physical capital, can actually get us. Now, I know the words economic model can sound kind of complicated and mathematical, but don't worry. We can understand the core idea with a really simple analogy. Just picture the economy's capital for each worker as the water level in a bathtub. And this bathtub idea is perfect for understanding how the model works. So you've got the faucet. That's all the new investment. New machines, new buildings, pouring water into the tub. But then you've got the drain. Water goes out for two reasons. Old equipment gets worn out and breaks down, and as the population grows, the existing capital gets spread thinner among more people. Eventually, the economy hits this crucial point called a steady state. That's when the water coming in from the faucet perfectly balances the water going out the drain. And at that point, the water level, the capital per worker, stops rising. And so does income. Okay, our tool is ready. We've got our suspect. So let's run the investigation and see if just adding more and more capital can explain those huge 20-fold differences in income. But as you're about to see, this is where our detective story takes a very, very surprising twist. And here it is, the fatal flaw in our more stuff theory. It's a concept called diminishing returns. Think about it. The first couple of machines in a factory make a massive difference. But the 100th machine? Not so much. It's kind of like adding a 10th chef to a really tiny kitchen. At some point, they just start getting in each other's way. Every new piece of capital you add gives you a smaller and smaller boost. So, what does this mean if a country decides to save and invest way more? Well, you get what's called a level effect, not a growth effect. Think of it like taking an elevator up to a higher floor. You get a nice one-time boost, and now you're at a higher level, which is great. But you're not actually moving upwards any faster than you were before. The economy just gets to a new, richer, steady state, but its long-term rate of growth doesn't change. It's on a higher path, sure, but it's a parallel one. And just how limited is this effect? Honestly, the numbers are pretty shocking. The model shows that even if a country pulls off a massive 50% increase in its savings rate, a huge effort, the long-run boost to its income per person is only about 22%. 22%. That gets us nowhere near explaining that 20-fold or 2,000% gap we're trying to solve. So, there you have it. Our prime suspect, physical capital, has an alibi. It's definitely part of the story, but there's no way it's the mastermind. And that means we have to go looking for a missing ingredient, for the real culprit behind all this long-run growth. And this is the million-dollar question, or really the trillion-dollar question that the Solow model forces us to confront. If just piling up more and more machines isn't the answer, then what is? What's the force that can actually beat diminishing returns and power sustained growth decade after decade? The model actually gives this mysterious force a name. It calls it the Solow residual, or sometimes just A. It's basically everything that's left over, all the growth we see that we can't explain by just adding more capital or more labor. It often gets the label technological progress, but as we're about to see, it's so much more than that.
So what is this magic ingredient, this A? Well, it's a big catch-all term for everything that lets us get more bang for our buck, more output from the same inputs. It's technology for sure, like having better recipes to make things. It's also human capital, having a smarter, more skilled, and better educated workforce. And crucially, it's also institutions, things like strong property rights and a rule of law that people can trust. These things give people the confidence to invest and to innovate. In short, it's not about working harder, it's all about working smarter.
Okay, so let's wrap up our investigation. It's time to deliver the verdict on what really makes nations rich, and to appreciate the true genius of the Solow model. And here's the key takeaway. The Solow model is famous not because it gave us the final answer, but because it proved, with rigorous logic, that the most obvious answer was wrong. It showed that just accumulating stuff could never explain the world we see today. Its real power was in pointing our investigation away from that prime suspect and toward the true, and yeah, more complex, drivers of prosperity: technology, human capital, and institutions.
You know, the Nobel laureate Robert Lucas really nailed the importance of all this. The consequences for human welfare are just so enormous, so staggering, that once you really start to think about economic growth, it's pretty hard to think about anything else.
And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. The Solow model cracked the case. It pointed us away from just physical stuff and toward ideas, knowledge, and efficiency. So the fundamental challenge for all of us, for policymakers, for innovators, for every society, isn't just how do we accumulate more capital anymore. The real question is, how do we build a world that gets us more and better ideas?